classes, or is this just one class right now? I need to actually look and see what the page says, huh? One playable character, okay. Give people a minute to get in here. This may be a shorter stream tonight, but we'll see. We may change games depending on what I play, what I experience, all that jazz. Hope everyone's doing well tonight. Sorry for the little absence in terms of streaming. I know it's very rare that I don't stream for at least... Well, I guess there have been times that I've gone 6 days or so without streaming, but it's one of those, it was, doing some work, looking at some wedding venues. But hey, everybody out there, my name is Dragnix. I cover indie games and specifically not everything not AAA related, although occasionally, like coming up with Resident Evil 4 remake, I will cover something like that. Every once in a while, I do get requests to look at a game and give some feedback. There are a lot of devs out there that just need some information in terms of their game and like how to make it better. The Evan Martinez, Party Moose Games, came to me and asked, hey, can you give it some feedback? I bought the game myself, didn't take a key. Do want to support stuff like that, but I will be using this as a way to give some feedback as well as show you guys what the game has to offer. It's early access. It's $2.99. It's a top twin stick shooter. I mean, simple enough. One character right now, 32 paths of upgrades. It said 36 upgrades in 8 rooms. So we'll see what this game has to offer, and we'll go from there. Try to give a little bit back to the dev community when I can. Okay, so first thing I'm noticing is that using controller, I could move the character, but I can't actually aim. So it's using the mouse. Okay. We need a little bit more volume here on my side. Hopefully that you guys can hear me just fine. Maybe I'll reduce this volume a little bit. All right, looking at the fact that we are going to move this back to a display capture because God knows, I have been noticing that OBS has not been happy with game captures lately, and I don't know why. So first, comments. The neon lights. Like, this is very bright compared to everything else in the game, and it is blinding. You may want to dim that a little bit, just for the sake of people's eyes, especially if they're playing in a dark room. Hold F to open the next room. Okay. Yeah, it is very jarring. Garbage gang. Survive, eh? Alright, first thing I'm noticing. Audio-wise. Why did the audio just kick up? So your default audio is a little bit one-sided. Like, the fact is I couldn't hear anything sound effect-wise, which is a problem. So your default audio should be a little bit increased on the sound effect side. Gained additional XP when you kill an enemy with Rifle Bash. Damage all nearby when veteran triggers. Increased frag grenade. I'll just take the damage. So this is a top-down roguelike. Seems to be rather simple. Do like the simpleness of the animations in terms of the... It looks like maybe a sort of a virtual space kind of thing. Is my guess. cooldowns are pretty easy to see, pretty like noticeable. It could use a little bit of flair around the numbers just to make them point out, but it works. Dodge it and knock enemies where to start. Assault right, increased range. Right. First thing that I'm immediately coming to is the fact that a lot of the upgrades are looking basic right now. I know I've said first thing too, but in terms of the upgrades, like increased ranged, increased damage, increased all that jazz. Like, it's great in theory, but like it's not gonna, like, you need something to really hold people's attention in terms of like over a game's time. Like, the fact is that doing that nowadays is not going to be enough. It isn't. The fact is that people are expecting more, and they're expecting things to be a little bit fun and weird, and maybe that's not every game of this genre, but really it is. Especially because you got to distinguish yourself away from others. Increase your maximum health gain. Yeah, sure, I'll gain more for the experience. Like, the experience with the rifle thing is a nice, like, idea, but like, how often is that going to come up? Is my question. Like, right now, I'm already starting to get like, okay, yeah, there's something I could do probably to make the game a little bit more interesting, or a little bit more like I could be doing better. But the problem is that I'm like, it's already feeling like every other one that I've played so far. Doesn't help that it looks like we're going to stay with a regular weapon the entire time, which, I mean, I know some games are going to do that. I mean, it may come down to character choices, but I do like the fact that you can punch people and it gives you a little bit of room to work with. It does seem like okay, so now I have two choices between. Okay, so there's a tree specifically that allows me to do things. Okay. Alright.
4, 3.
So it's just survive as long as you can, it looks like, until the area's done and taking damage there. Gain increased damage for taking a few seconds after taking damage. I mean, I guess that is veteran, but a little bit Capture as many zones as possible. Okay. Okay, level up. Rifle bash hits enemies around you. Decrease dodge. Sure. I get that they want the community feedback kind of thing, and I get the idea of early access, but I think one of the first things you have to do is bring something, like, you got to bring something interesting to the table, I would say. In order to really take that to a level where people are like, yeah, I'm going to get involved with it. Because right now, what I'm seeing, like, from a gameplay perspective, is just mechanically fine, a little boring in terms of enemy design, but, you know, it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world. Additional bullet would be nice. as much as I can. Like, I'm feeling the pressure. That, I will say, the enemies seem to be in the right space in terms of, like, keeping the pressure up, especially in the room number here. So, like, I'm liking that. But what I'm immediately thinking of is, like, how is the next run going to be different? And I'm really wondering about that. Robotron 2884 2. I actually don't know if I know that reference. I feel like I should. Under arrest. Survive. Oh. I just have to not die like all the other ones? Like, these all seem to be time trials, so I'm curious what's different about this one. It's a pointy-click. I mean, yeah, but twin-stick shooters are similar to that. I will say the fact that the controller doesn't work in terms of the basics, I think that's one of the first things that the dev needs to realize is that twin-stick shooters, there's a reason why it's called twin-stick shooters. A lot of people love playing these games with controllers. So I would say that needs to be one of the first things that you need to look at. I mean, decrease dodge cooldown, I guess. I mean, I'm not sure how much that will help, but like, there is something to this. Like, what I will say to the dev is that it looks like you've got the speed and the aggression right in terms of, like, I'm having to really consider where I'm going and what I'm doing. And to be honest, those fundamentals at times can be very hard to get right. Because if they're too aggressive, it feels like you're just getting overwhelmed all the time and you don't want to play. But at the same time, if they're too passive, then it's just like, well, why am I playing? Like, it's just a bunch of bodies that I'm killing. So I feel like I have enough skill in terms of being able to deal with these things without it being overly difficult. So that's nice.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
It's like how everything is a soul-like nowadays. Well, yeah, everything wants to have roguelike, or wants to get those sweet Steam tags. So, enemies killed by explode damage. Okay, see, now this is more interesting to me. This is something that's always been done, but you know, it's something that draws my attention because that changes my gameplay a little bit. That changes, like, oh, I want to focus on enemies that are near each other, and that, like, the fact is that doing more damage per bullet doesn't really change that much in the, like, it changes some things, but not that much. I mean, into rogue anything, do we mean anything roguelike or just the original game of Rogue? Oh. Got me with that shot. Up. Increasing my, like, when I have 10 health, it just feels, I'm a victim of a need for, like, anything where, like, I'm a victim of need of structure. I mean, roguelikes do have some good structure to it, but like I get your point. Like roguelikes can be very like hard to get into in terms of like certain key aspects of it. I know that one of the reasons why I love roguelikes is actually a old game called Riot 2, which is an RPG, but it had this cave in it called the Ancient Cave, which had like reset your characters for that cave to do like interesting things, like you found things in crates and you needed things to level up, and like it changed how I perceived like challenges in certain games, and it had permanent upgrades that were always interesting to me. But I think it clicks or it doesn't. And some games are not for everybody, and that's fine. I'm supposed to destroy more structures, aren't I? Instead of just killing things. Assault rifle bullets go. That could be really useful. Yep, dead. Got too specific in terms of trying to like corner myself. So it's weird that you have a class. Like it's weird that we don't have classes yet. There's only one character to play as, but you have it as a selectable option. That's going to confuse people. Obviously, part of the thing is that it's early access, and it says that it's going to have stuff coming in a very quick manner, but I feel like holding off a little bit and maybe like developing like 2 or 3 characters to start off with would have been a better move, but we'll see. We'll see how different this next run plays, because that's what it's going to come down to, is like how different are these runs going to feel like. Especially when most of the time it's just survival as long as you can. All right, let's reduce that, I guess. Gain additional experience. I mean, I'm gonna try using just rifle bash stuff for now, just to see how specialized a character can get. Like, can it get overpowered or not? Because that is a test to determine balance. The fact is that if something is giving you ridiculous amounts of damage potential and decrease dodge, enemies hit by frag grenade. You know, let's go for the dodge to get ourselves
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Do health. So not bad. But it's not doing enough from a run, or like from a variety standpoint so far. Like, one of my favorites of this genre is Nation Red, and you could call it basic in a lot of ways, but it had this element in which it kept you wanting to come back for more, in terms of like the different guns, the different power-ups in particular, and nothing that was too overpowered. Sure. Like, I would tell the dev to get a copy of Nation Red and just play that a little bit and understand, like, what that game did in terms of its sort of addictive nature for the top-down shooter genre. That could be a good hint in terms of teaching you like what some of the things that you may want to refine in terms of your game here. So like one of the things I'm noticing is that yeah, I gotta do damage. Even when trying to like sort of hoard these guys in the right area, there's enough done in the level design where like these little trash cans are doing enough so that it isn't just you like circling around over and over again, which is something that a lot of these games sometimes don't remember. That hey, you know, maybe you want to have them changed up a little bit in terms of like they don't just do this where they just stay around the corners and try to move people along. You need some barriers in terms of stopping people from just looping around over and over again. Okay, immediately there, shots coming off screen that I couldn't see, that's going to drive players nuts. Even if they're in a reasonable distance from you, it's still going to drive them nuts because it's going to be like, well, wait a minute, how was I supposed to deal with that? Because really, they didn't really have a chance. And I noticed how I went for things to do with the rifle hit, and I haven't gotten anything since then. Like let me focus on being overpowered in this way, and then all of a sudden I don't actually get anything for that particular one, which sucks. Okay, increased damage, hits all enemies around you. Yeah, that's. The music's starting to wear on me, but that's something I expect in early access to be like, okay, we need maybe some more music. Let's get the resources on that. Ah. I mean, I need the health. I don't like the idea of just using health there, but enemy attacks need a little bit more variety here. You've got some, like, you know, those ranged enemies, and you got the guy who's focusing up his attack and jumping, but I do think it needs a little bit more variety. Obviously, that will come in time with more enemies, but
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Alright. Simple enough. Hold F to select the next room, if you do. See, and the fact that we're getting the same scenarios too is also a little bit like players who play this genre love variety. They want to be able to replay this over and over again without like feeling like they're doing the same thing. Enough familiarity so that they can maximize it, but not enough where they're like sitting there going, oh, you know. And I'm already seeing the same upgrades. Are the controls responsive? Yeah, the controls are responsive, I would say. They are where I would want them to be. Not to the point where I'm like, it's too slippy, but like, you can't like like speed to a certain area after you made a mistake and moved in the wrong way to get rid of an enemy, kind of thing. There is potential under the surface, despite what it may look like to some people. Some people may see something generic. I do see potential with this in terms of this genre. Granted, it's gonna need something to make it stand out, but it's got potential. Increase your attack damage. Sure, attack damage. I need that health. Oh, that health goes away? Oh, okay, that's good to know. So you gotta run towards health, and that is a little bit of a that's gonna be an interesting problem, because that means that most of the time enemies are gonna clump around power-ups that you kill. Like you kill somebody and people are coming behind it to take their space, and you'll have to run towards enemies to get them. And you may want to look at the time on that. I'll have to play another round or two to really confirm if that's going to be a good cycle or not. That could be very, very annoying for a player, where it's just like, I can't ever get to the things that I want because enemies are just like completely overshadowing me all the time. Okay, I think breathing room, just to give myself a little bit of room when I need to. Range seems good for the initial weapon. Like, you can get range upgrades, which is nice, but it seems good for the speed in... Like, a lot of the basics here do seem like they know what they're doing from a dev standpoint, which is good to see. Like the numbers behind the curtain seem right. Hit by fragment or knockback. Just give me more room to work with. Yeah. I do wonder if that enemy is ever going to hit me, because unless if I'm really trying to mess around with things, I mean that attack is a little bit too slow. Maybe some audio settings for the audio cues in terms of when items are going to leave, to give a player an indication that, hey, they need to really pay attention right now because shit's going down. Sure, Electro Ring. I don't know. I mean, I know I'm supposed to be destroying certain things, but with all the enemies here. It's just there's too much that I need to focus on to really focus on doing that.
Five, four, three, two.
And I don't see really getting punished a lot for not doing it. So I'm curious on what the game's justification of that is. Like, oh, you just need to survive, really, is what it's telling me, which is a little bit concerning because, like, how is that different from just surviving? Escort the payload. All right. So, moving. All right, cool. Ow. Noticing as I try to get closer, it's getting a little bit harder to get closer. As I get further away, I should say. Like, making my way back, it can be a little bit difficult. Reduce the card whenever it kills an enemy. Oh! That seems interesting. I am using all my skills, which is a good thing to see. Like, I'm actually having to be like, oh, I need to use everything in my power, which is sometimes in these games that you get a skill that is just like, you know, compared to all the other ones, doesn't make sense to use, or in a pinch. But now I am using everything that I can to keep everyone away. So you do get leveling. Oh, every 34. Oh, well, yes, I will take the health that I may get just because I need health. Oh, boy. Oh, there's enemies that are actually freezing me. Okay, game is introducing new mechanics. Good. But I am in trouble. Yep. Alright. There is a high score system. Okay. No way to see what scores are, so that's a little bit concerning, but okay. Let's do one more run, and we'll see what we come out of there. See if we can get to level 8. Again, I know people may be like, Dragnix, this is a game that no one wants to see in terms of gameplay, and like, you know, there's more interesting games out there. It's not all about the game, like the games that I cover. Like, I try to cover interesting games, but sometimes you do need to go back and sort of look at the little ones and look at, like, I think it's important as a reviewer, as somebody who takes their criticism seriously, to go back and look at games that are more basic and more, like, I don't want to say grassroots. That makes it sound very pretentious. But, like, go to games that focus on simpler things and understand that, you know, there are little micro decisions in all those games that can really change how people enjoy them. It can be something that people, like, for example, something that I notice And something that I try to do on my YouTube channel a lot is that you'll notice that when it comes to the games that I cover back to back, like I try in my best ability to cover different genres, and especially back to back in terms of I'm not reviewing 3 RPGs in a row. Part of that is that I feel like it could be fatigue. Like when you're in that third RPG, all of a sudden, elements that were nice before all of a sudden don't become nice to you anymore because you feel like it's starting to become plain. It's to me something where I try to do my best. It's not always gonna happen. Like sometimes you get 2 review codes, one right next to each other that you want to cover both, and it just so happens that they're both the same art. Like they're both FPSs. Sometimes you do your best to try to make it at least like an FPS that's Doom-like, an FPS that's more slow, or like a stealth-based one. But it's something that I feel like some reviewers nowadays, especially specialized reviewers, I know that people are considered experts in certain areas. Like, you could be the RPG guy, and I don't want to take their specialty away from them in terms of like, yeah, if they're the RPG guy, they're the RPG guy. Their opinion does make, like, they've played probably more than anybody else in terms of the genre. But with that said, if you're playing them all the time, how are you really like figuring out, well, wait a minute, what does this one do differently? Like, is this one like just like the same as the other ones? Is this one being unfairly looked at because it's not as different? And I also think it is something that people need to realize that, hey, play a genre and review a game of a genre that you don't like at times. Yes, be aware that, like giving it a bad score because you don't like the genre, again, that's not the kind of reviews that I do, so you got to be careful with that. So it's like, okay, forcing somebody to play a genre that they may not like in terms of their review score, okay, understandable. But I think it's important to get an understanding of, why does that genre not work to you? Why can you see what that genre does for other people that is worth their time? Like here, a lot of people are going to see, okay, we're playing the same segment over and over again, which is a reasonable criticism. But at the same time, somebody's got to realize that, well, hold on a second. Part of the whole thing about roguelikes and these kind of like procedural, like these wave level games, is that there has to be a level of repeatability on some level. Not entirely, but it needs some level of replayability, because if you don't have that replayability to a certain extent, then every run is too new. And every run being too new means that you may not make progress. And that can be even worse, because then people may get frustrated and say, oh, it's too hard for me. So, it can be tricky. Like how to review a football manager game. You're right. Part of it is, I think, going into it, seeing what the values are of people who do like the genre. Like, what is the game trying to do? It's always the first thing I come back to, and it's part of. I'm gonna take a pause here, and this is going into things a little bit differently. One of the things that I do when it comes to a game, when I critique it, is I'm reading this. I'm reading the description of the game, and in particular, what it says they're doing. If it makes comparisons to other games, then I take that into consideration. But what I don't do is make assumptions in terms of, okay, this is going to be, you know, a great fast-paced game because I want it to be. Something that I really do try to get across to people who are reviewing, and if I can give them advice, is that you may want a game to be one thing, but if the game is not giving you that, then you have to realize that, hey, maybe your perception or maybe what the game says it is something you need to focus on. For example, the biggest one I always point out. There's an infamous review from IGN regarding God. It's one of their lowest rated games. It's an outlier in terms of what that game's quality is. But in that game, the reviewer played the game in a way that the game was not recommended. That, like, the game literally told him, you need to do X, and he kept on doing Y. Now, is that a reasonable review? One could argue that. But if he's reviewing it based on those mechanics, is that fair to the game? No, I don't think so, especially if the game said, it literally puts out in front of you, hey, you know, this is how you need to, you know, you need to dodge, you need to block, you need to do this. Now, can it do that incorrectly? Of course. But that was a review that when I was making my review system, my enhancer system, that's one of the blueprints for it, was focus on the main score being what the game says it's going to do, not what it's going to do entirely well. Another example I use is Skyrim. When you look at the, I think the Steam page, and it may have changed over the years. Some games, like, it may not mention every system that it's going to use. It may mention that it uses magic. It may mention that, you know, it's, you know, a huge adventure game. But it may not mention stealth, for example. And so when I'm looking at the systems, I may look if the stealth implementation's good. But if the game didn't focus on that in terms of some of its mechanics, in terms of its PR and its, you know, what it sold itself on, it may be less. I may consider it less in the overall review. I still consider it, but I still be like, well, hold on a second. It didn't necessarily say it was a huge stealth game. It may have just said, you know, it has those mechanics. Do I think it needs to be looked at? Yes. But will I, like, absolutely condemn the game if it's, like, not 100% like the best version of it? No, I won't. Now, if it highlights the fact that it is a stealth game, like, one of its huge things is, like, you could go around and kill enemies and not actually have to kill any of them. Okay, then yeah, that's more of the main score coming into play there because it pointed out. With that said, the enhancer system then covers the rest in my scoring system, where it's like, okay, it may not have been covered there, but for people who love stealth, and if this game does stealth well, yeah, I'm going to put it there so that people can understand that, oh, for a regular player, it may be, you know, this, but for a stealth player, oh, they may love this kind of thing. And I know I'm ranting a little bit because I'm trying to get a little bit more of the, what's the word I'm looking for? A little bit farther before I put more criticism out here in terms of this game, because obviously I'm doing a lot of the same thing. But
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
5. What's the structure first? So it's just good. The fact that there's no sound effects on the fire is a little bit odd. Like, it just makes it like so that like it feels like something's missing. When hit, stun the attacker. When veteran triggers, magically slow all nearby enemies. Nah. Did that actually do damage to it? Okay, so that did. Okay, killed that. Good. Yeah, it's still early access. The thing is, though, what I have to tell devs this a little bit. Is like, yeah, you could release an early access and add all these features to your game. You're not gonna get the people to give you the early access without that hook. The fact is that this could become a fantastic game. It could become, you know, a game that everybody wants to play with the right resources. But the feedback he's looking for, unless somebody comes and actually plays it and buys it and gives him the feedback, it's not gonna, like, you need that hook. It's something that games nowadays, they need that hook, unfortunately, because there's so many of them out there. There's so many games out there that you just don't have the time to really play it slow anymore. You need that hook right away. Like, I could see this game becoming a solid title, but like, right now it's got 4 reviews on Steam. And there's a reason for that, because like, it's not graphically impressive. It's not like really gonna draw your attention in terms of the gameplay right now. But on the other hand, it's fine. It does the job. Ow. Experience. I think I've made it to... Did I make it to the Room 7 last time? Yeah, I did, because it's Room 6, I should say. I mean, the sad thing is that it is possible still that the game, like, even at doing all those improvements, after a while, the game finally gets some attention, and all of a sudden, the game gets picked up and it starts gaining speed and things start working. There have been situations like that. For example, Among Us was out for literally a year before it became hot, which is unheard of. I mean, a game usually does a lot of its, it used to, a lot of its real sales in the first 2 weeks. It's not as true anymore, but it's still, I believe, the most significant period. And there's a reason for that, because it gets on the store page, it gets the most attention, and people aren't going back through the annals of Steam all the time to look at games that no one has heard of, because especially with more things coming out nowadays than ever. It's just a fact. Does that suck? A little bit. But it's the nature of the beast, unfortunately. And getting the right streamer to get the attention on it does go a hell of a long way. But like, certain games also aren't necessarily constructed for that. A good example I could say is, you know, I don't think Stardew Valley would have been as like Stardew Valley could do what Among Us did. It just doesn't. People need that content before they really dig into it. And it's not obviously a streamer like focused game. It's more laid back. Certain streamers will do it, but it's not focusing on certain aspects like that. Obviously, multiplayer and elements like that are always going to do better in those areas because, well, the multiplayer element is always what ends up doing the best in games like this. Or co-op. Some games aren't designed for that, but unfortunately, that's just the case. Not to say that there aren't streamers that focus on like first-person games and stuff like that, but you'll notice that the people at the top are the biggest streamers. Yeah, they're playing things like Among Us and the most popular games, and obviously, we all know why I'm playing games like this. Because I've got more of a want for indies to focus on indies, and you know, if I wanted to be horribly successful on Twitch, I would be playing a lot of different games, but that's not who I am. So, seems reasonable. Oh, how did I get full health? Like adding, so like a good design decision here is to, now they put things more in the middle of the room, and the enemies feel like they have a little bit more speed to them right now, like a tiny bit, or maybe they're a little bit more aggressive. It fascinates me to see like all the games that come out on Steam and like what they could be and what they will be, because it is hard for me as a someone who, like, I do software for a living. So for those who don't know, I do software engineering. I work on point of sale systems. I've worked on things like ticket vending machines, stuff like that. But there's like indies in that. Ever watch the Homestar Runner cartoon about indie films? There's indies and there's strong, sad, crying to a saxophone indies. Yeah, and there's more artistic versions of some of that stuff, and sometimes indies for being the sake of indie too, which can work at times. Don't get me wrong. There is a certain charm to something that was put together by someone. Like a good example, Game Jam games. Like, are they the most impressive thing in the world? When you consider their time, yeah, but like from a gameplay perspective, from like a viable perspective, they're probably not as wanted by people. But for me, like when I see a game like Potato Survival that put together a coherent story, and it was a Game Jam game to begin with, and it was so weird, yet it worked. Like, those games fascinate me the most, because it's like, how did this come to be, and how did it work so well without, like, in sort of this weird structure? And just sort of trying to break down and try to understand that and apply it to other games should be a whole process. Alright, select next room. I'm not sure why, like, I'm just opening the door. Selecting the next room, I'm assuming that there's going to be branching paths. Oh my, is this a boss fight? It is. He's missing sound. Like, there needs to be some sound. So like, but like, is Moon Studios a real indie? Remind me. I don't remember all the names of the studios off the top of my head. So, okay, yeah, that's. I consider them indie. So they got funding from Microsoft, and so the real question is, at what point does a game become an indie or become single A? It's a hard question, and it's some of the reason why I do the non-AAA element when I do some of these streams, when I do my little like blurb at the top, is the fact that indie nowadays doesn't have a real good definition. Like, there are certain games that you can classify as indie, no question. Like, Undertale was indie, no question. It may not feel like it anymore, but it was literally a couple of people doing it, if that. Does funding take away indiness? It's a very good question. I feel like it doesn't, because I feel like, especially nowadays, that when I think of indie titles, it's a vision from a developer that doesn't get compromised in the process of making it. Like, I'm thinking of things like, designed by committee, where it's like, we got to design this game to be the best, the most attractive to our shareholders, and we need to add microtransactions and things like that. Like, that to me is like, okay, yeah, sure, there have been indie games with microtransactions, but some of them did it to be able to work on, to be able to make money and keep the game alive in certain cases, but some of them were done because it was the demographic. Minecraft originally was indie, and is it indie anymore? Well, did it become something more than indie? Again, very good question. When I think of indies, Minecraft would probably, right now for me, not come to mind. But at the same time, when I think of the history of indies, it's one of the first games to come. It is about audience reception, about what it like. In the end, what does the audience think is indie? What does the audience think is not indie? I mean, one of the things that I love to do, and even though it pains me to do it every year, is that overlooked game list. Because, those are the people who, they need the help. They're the ones who made a game that is great, but for some reason, it did, whether it be marketing, whether it be just not getting the right streamers, like, they need the help because they played a great game and it's just not getting the attention that they deserve. And you know what? Have there been games on that list that I would consider non-indie? Yes. Zanky Zero is a prime example. I don't consider the developer Spike Chunsoft an indie. But it made that list because it didn't get the attention it deserved, and it's a great game. Granted, not for everyone, but it's a great game. And would I put it alongside indies, though? In certain ways. And you're right with the clones thing. Like, the fact is that a lot of the gaming industry, especially nowadays, can be follow the leader. Like, Five Nights at Freddy's did so well, and thus we need to, everybody needs to do that. Were there good games that came out of it? Yeah, absolutely. Have there been great fan games that have come out of it? Absolutely. But is there a word for that kind of company? I call it single A. Is it necessarily the greatest of descriptions of it? No. But I just put it on a single A level personally because it's like it's got the funding, it's got enough people behind it, but it's not at the level of a AAA. Then again, I'm a baseball kind of person, so the minor system is single A, double A, triple A, and then the majors. All right. It's an interesting game. It's got some elements to it that work. I'm not gonna play it again on stream because I just beat it. I hope the dev. I'll write a Steam review. Work with that. I'm gonna probably change to a different game here. I actually want to go back to Vernal Edge. So I hope the dev gets a little bit of information out of this. I am going to switch over and I'm going to go to game capture because I don't need to be displaying stuff on the screen that no one needs to see. I'm gonna go back to Vernal Edge just because I wanted to play more of that. I wasn't feeling that good to begin with that day that I was playing it, and so now let's change it up. Do community stream manager. I guess I should run. Give me a second. Maybe I should. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna stop it and then start it again.